we're up in 2. Hey, everybody, welcome to the Santita Jackson Show, AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. What is the moment that we're in? We've got to talk about it. We have just had today, as of this taping, it turns out President Trump and Vice President Vance, all they have to do is be sworn in because the election was affirmed today. Peaceful transfer of power. We are in the midst of it right now. What does that mean? And where do we go from here? Chaos or community? The fact is, I was told by a wise woman, Mrs. Juanita Passmore, one of our family's dear friends, that let no thing have power over you but God. So many of us are fretting and we're worried about this moment and we're scared. And we really ought not be, because it's another moment. It is a moment. And so let's get right to it. Let's talk about what this moment means and what we should be fighting for. And what about January 6th? I mean, because knowing that the Capitol basically, beyond the snow, because I hope you're doing okay there, just outside of D.C., Darl, because y'all got a lot of snow. And that is not something the DMV does very well. Bless your hearts. Beyond the snow, the Capitol was locked down because there was a fear that we would have a repeat of what we had 4 years ago this day. That did not happen. And for the record, history rarely repeats itself the same way. My mother said, don't worry, January 6th won't happen the way it happened before. She said it doesn't happen like that. They already did that. They're going to come up with something new. And it's not just they. We've had a heck of a past 4 years, everybody. I mean, we've got a lot going on, and we need to talk about that. But what about January 6th? What about pardons? What about so many questions that remain unanswered? Like, where were the police that day? They were not there. It was like they had a blue flu. So what was going on? Why were the National Guard not called in by the people who are in charge of the Capitol Police? And that is not Trump. That's Speaker Pelosi. That's the Capitol Police. That's the Sergeant at Arms. I'm asking those questions, Terry O'Neill, President Emeritus of the National Organization of Women, Attorney O'Neill, because I don't want to see that again. Right. That was frightening. I remember Attorney Darl Jones, Transformative Justice Coalition attorney, Mark Fancher, brilliant author and cultural critic and social critic. I said, wait a minute. I called my mother. I said, hey, something is going on at the Capitol. And she said, oh, okay. I said, no, Mom. You need to turn on TV right now. She said, I said, Mom, please. I've never seen anything like this. And this is one time that I'm glad my brother is not in Congress right now. Well, I guess I spoke too soon because I got a brother back up there right now. And you have a moment in which there's a lot of unrest. There's a lot of lack of ease in America today. Mm-hmm. People have had it up to here with not having adequate medical coverage. They've had it up to here with wars that they can't explain, expenditures that there's no accounting for them. I mean, there's just a lot going on. And you have presidents who are giving out pardons, and we don't quite understand what Biden's pardons were about, and we don't know what President Trump's pardons will be about. We're at an inflection point, I think, in the Republic. So everybody, I want you to meet me on Blue Sky at santitajackson.bsky.social. I can't believe it, and I set the account up myself. Ooh. And of course, I'm on X at Santita J, and the Santita Jackson Show. And please meet me on Facebook, the Santita Jackson and Friends page. Many of you, I'm so honored that you go and you try to befriend me on Facebook. But I tell you what, the Santita Jackson page, the rules from Facebook prohibit me from accepting new friends there. They're tossing people off because they have a limit. I don't have a limit on the fan page, So please go to the Santita Jackson and Friends page. Please go there. So let me start with you, Attorney Mark Fancher. I know you got to leave at the top of the hour. I need to know um, what you're seeing. And let me say hello to Mike and Maria Rodriguez. How you doing, my sister? Lorraine, my sister. How you doing? Call my mama today. You said I thought you thought you were calling me and you called my mom. She's not mad. It's all right. It's all right. She loves it. Attorney Mark Fancher, when you we saw Vice President Harris stand there, erect and strong and firm. She saw those votes counted out, and she affirmed the election and kept it moving. Um, and now what? I mean, now what about these pardons? What about people who've been held and they've been in limbo? And now we're seeing that the courts are inclined to drop some of the most serious charges. And so, I mean, just talk to me, Mark Fancher. What is this?
Well, it's a very complex period in history that we're a part of, and the things that you mentioned earlier, the loss of healthcare, people being fed up with the wars and the expenditures that they can't explain, the loss of opportunities for employment and education, all of these things, what they are symptoms of an empire that is on the verge of collapse. And empires collapse because they are set up as vehicles or methods of making lots and lots of profits for a very few. And in the process of trying to lock down far-flung areas of the world, and in the case of the US empire, its effort to dominate the entire planet, it fails to take care of home. It doesn't take care of the people who reside in its purported headquarters. And when that happens, the people themselves begin to administer what will ultimately be the killing blow to the empire. And so you have lots of anger, you have lots of frustration. And January 6th was one manifestation of that. It was misdirected anger. All of these people who charged the Capitol had every reason to be as angry as they were. They just failed to identify the real enemy. They were not organized. They had no plan or strategy which was calculated to actually result in what should have been revolutionary change in the country. And so you have them, you have other segments of the population who are equally frustrated, equally angry, and all of it ultimately is going to result in the collapse of the empire. We're just going to have to acknowledge and admit that. But the oligarchy itself, those who control the empire, have been scheming and plotting all along to preserve it as long as they possibly can. And I had begun to doubt my understanding of how they function up until recently. Some of those who have heard me speak in the past may recall that for many, many months, I was predicting that, this was before President Biden had left the presidential race. I predicted that neither he nor Donald Trump were ultimately going to be on the ballot in November. And according to my expectations, certainly President Biden was not on the ballot. But when Trump was still on it and the election went all the way through, then I began to question what was actually going on, because neither of those two men were good for the empire. Biden brought with him lots of baggage that made it very difficult for the empire to continue to perpetuate its lies about what it was doing overseas. When he was associated so plainly in the genocide that was unfolding in Gaza, and a lot of the other things that were going on overseas, that did not play well in many parts of the world. And so long term, he was going to be a liability. As far as Donald Trump is concerned, he just never was part of the program for the empire. A lot of the things that he's for, the empire is flatly against. And so he was also going to be a big problem. He was a wild card in addition to that, someone that they could not control. And so how he was going to function as a president that was going to preserve the empire was a mystery to me. But at least for the moment, my questions have been answered in the fact that what they decided to do, given the fact that part of the revolution that's unfolding in this country involved Donald Trump. The votes for him were really a method that many people were using to voice their frustration and their displeasure with the status quo. And so this was an overwhelming sentiment that existed in the country. And the empire knew that they were not going to be able to contain that. They just had to go with that flow. And they had to allow him to go through the process and to win the election. But their method of controlling him was to give him a babysitter. And so Elon Musk has been around for a long time, but he became Donald Trump's best friend forever just in very recent period. And so he enters the scene, becomes a high level associate and friend and best buddy of Donald Trump in the closing days of the election and in the days leading up to his being sworn in. And he begins to function as the shadow president even before Donald Trump takes office. And that's what he will remain. If not him, then someone else. There will be someone who's designated by the oligarchy to keep Donald Trump in check. And Trump can't say a word about it because that's where the money is coming from. That's where the power is. And so he is going to be bound by that. So we may wonder about and speculate about many of the loonier things that Trump has said that he will do. He will do them as long as what he's trying to do is consistent with the plan of those who run the empire. But for those things which are going to be inconsistent with their agenda, then he will be shut down. And whether pardons are part of those are some of the things that will be shut down or not remains to be seen.
You know, it is a very controlled system, Terry O'Neill. I mean, that was one of the things that we did learn when Reverend ran, that you don't just walk up in there. I mean, there are different. I remember the game changer for our campaign, Attorney Fancher and Attorney Jones, was Michigan. When it wasn't that Reverend just won Michigan. I mean, it was in a field of 6 or 7 people. He got 56% of the vote. Mm-hmm. And that was such a game changer. That happened on a Saturday. He had to be in Washington the next day and have a meeting the day after that. Boom. So this, when you talk about Elon Musk being his minder, you know, because everyone's saying, oh, he's surrounded by billionaires and near trillionaires. I'm like, honey, you have as many on the Democratic side. You just don't see them. It's the same game, Terry O'Neill, Attorney O'Neill. It's the same game. And the thing is, the people are not winning. You know, and yet I think the people are winning because we're beginning to wake up, Attorney Fancher. I mean, there are questions, Attorney Jones, Attorney O'Neill, really. Attorney O'Neill, people are beginning to ask a lot of questions, and they might be far flung. They might sound like they're coming out of left or right field or midfield. I don't know, or even outside the stadium. Mm-hmm. You know, but people are now questioning everything. So, I mean, so what say you? Because I mean, now, I mean, what do you think would be the impact of pardoning the people who were part of the January 6th attacks? Because, I mean, what has come out that has not been widely reported is that you had a real mix of people who were part of those attacks, Attorney Fancher. It wasn't just the marchers, for the most part, stayed down the street. The people the police were not really there. You can't approach the Hill. And certainly not on the day when everybody from both houses are there, Attorney Jones. Think about it. The vice president was in the building. Mm-hmm. The Speaker of the House was in the building. The most powerful people, you could have taken out our whole government. You can't get near that hill. So that for me was like, what is going on here? I've never seen anything like this. And then people walking in and walking. It was bizarre. And you know what? Those are I'm not, you can call me a conspiracist all you want. These are conversations that people are having. I watch Washington Journal in the morning. People are doing a lot of reading, and this stuff is out there, Terry. And plus, we have a lot of folks who are retired military, who are police officers, who participated or know someone who did.
Did you say walking in? Is that what you said? They were walking in the Capitol?
Some people were, and
once they broke their way in, they started walking. Yeah,
and some of them were walking through, because remember they walked around the day before. Mm-hmm. Hold on,
right.
Wait a minute.
That's right.
This is during COVID, when you couldn't get into the Capitol.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Now I brought Ray McGovern, who briefed president for 27 years as one of the top CIA officers in the agency. I said, what happened here? Because if you can breach the security on Capitol Hill, at the Capitol, not on the Hill, at the Capitol, when the vice president, the Speaker of the House, the majority leaders of both houses, and the minority leaders and everybody in Congress is in the building, because you cannot vote for the president. You can't vote remotely. You got to be in person. Everybody was there. How'd y'all get in the building? I think that's a question for me to ask. And when I find out, I said, Mr. McGovern, what happened? He said, well, they're like 2,500 Capitol Hill police officers. Yeah. He said like 2/3 of them were not there that day.
Yeah.
Terry, that happened. I mean, I'm like, I just don't want to see that happen again.
I mean, I completely agree. And I think that, I think Mark Fancher's analysis is really spot on and really brilliant. At the same time, I think we should not underestimate the the empire, the oligarchy. They have an agenda, and it includes profit maximization as opposed to profit making. So profit making would leave room for paying your employees a decent wage, and maybe being a good corporate citizen, and not just squeezing everybody in sight so that you funnel more dollars up to the hedge fund that owns the private equity firm that owns the manufacturing company, right? So we're in a world of capitalist profit maximization, which is squeezing everybody. And that's why so many people who identify as left, who identify as right, they're unhappy. They're understanding that this is not working. And in particular, it is not working for their kids. And they are angry. They're furious.
But that's a brilliant point, because we don't make the distinction between profit making and profit maximization.
Yes.
I mean, I haven't done that.
I know it's something that I heard on a podcast recently, but I watched it literally happen in the 1990s when I was teaching corporate law, and the Delaware court, which controls most of corporate law, was steadily marching to the right, to the point where in the 70s, corporations did not exist solely for the purpose of maximizing profits for shareholders. And by the end of the 90s, it did exist solely for the purpose of maximizing profit for the shareholders. And then who the shareholders are changed dramatically as that rule changed as well. So now it's really hedge fund managers and private equity firms and so forth. They're really money. They're just money people. They are not manufacturing types. So this has happened over the past 30, 40 years. I think that needs to be understood. And here's what I consider to be a hopeful point. I talk to Gen Z people here in red state Tennessee, and they tell me that they believe that capitalism is evil, or that capitalism is broken, or that capitalism is not working, and that, maybe socialism is the answer, maybe something else is the answer, but they are very clear about what is happening. And I think their parents are slower to come to that realization, but actually I think quite a few parents are getting there. So that's one interesting thing. But we cannot ignore our country's history, a country built on genocide with respect to indigenous Native peoples, and on enslavement with respect to people of African descent, and how this was a capitalist agenda to accomplish the genocide and to accomplish the kidnapping, the invasion of Africa, the kidnapping, and the importation of workers who were enslaved. So to me, the crisis of capitalism that we're facing could very well lead us down a very long, very painful path of reverting to, enslavement and ethnic cleansing, or whatever you want to call it. I mean, it is in the DNA of certainly of white people, and white people making most of the decisions in this country right now, right? The DNA that we've inherited goes in that direction, and I think that makes me extremely worried.
Well, hold on, because I know, Mark, you have a hard stop in like 4 minutes. What thought do you want to leave us with before you go?
No, I agree completely with Terry, and particularly with respect to the generational difference in terms of perspectives on the economy and that type of thing, which is why I may be a little bit more optimistic about that, because I know that when I was, young, college age, whatever it may be, for me to say that I was a socialist was an invitation for ferocious attacks, even by my peers. Right. And so that was something that I had to whisper. Now, when I say it in any group that it is represented in significant part by younger people, they almost shrug their shoulders as though, yeah, who isn't a socialist? And I think that the reaction against them is explained in many ways by the fact that there is an understanding by those in power that there is this changing analysis among that group. I mean, how many groups and organizations have set up encampments in the past for various different reasons, whether it was to protest Wall Street abuses or apartheid or whatever it may be, and the police responded as they respond in any case when there are demonstrations these days. I mean, it's sort of, it's sort of polite and cordial and ordered. But when they have these encampments that protest genocide in Gaza, then they come at them as though they are Hamas. I mean, they come with heavy arms and lots of force. And so that's because they are concerned not about what these people will do in the encampments, but they're concerned about what they're thinking. And I think that the more that people begin to analyze, the more they will understand that it is important for them to organize. And if they begin to organize with an informed political analysis and with a real appreciation for what it is that they're fighting, then I think that any efforts that the empire might make to use, brute force in order to beat them back will have less of an impact than it would than if they were coming at a population that was bitterly divided and ignorant. And so I think it's really a cue for us to intensify our efforts to continue to enlighten and educate, and more importantly, to begin to organize people so that when they come after, much larger groups of people than just people, a few college kids in an encampment, that we're really prepared for that. We have a plan and thoughts about how to respond to it, so that real people, not just corporations and rich families, so that real people can transform this country into something that reflects what it really should be in terms of a community of people of goodwill and who really want to make real the ideals that this country has just included in its propaganda for many generations.
Well, thank you so much for that, because I have to tell you, you're right, when you're talking to young people, they shrug their shoulders. The labels mean nothing to them now. They want results. And so we thank you, Mark, for being with us today. Thank you for being patient as we got things started a little bit later today, but sending you so much love, Mark. Of course, he's the father of a bison, so how can I be upset?
A bison alum.
Come on now. I love it. Love it.
Okay.
Love it.
All right.
I'm sending you so much love. All right. Well, Attorney Darl Jones, what are your thoughts? Because we had a lot, it was just interesting. We had a lot coming at us today. But we have a lot coming at us, I think, just in general, Terry and Darl. I mean, and it's coming from everywhere. I brought up a point, I think, in the last hour that even as we're looking at January 6th, we're seeing the pardons, they're being discussed, they're being meted out, and we don't quite understand this. We see how politicized all of this is. Mm-hmm. And not just politicized, because we overuse that term. How partial. It's just it really depends upon which way the wind is blowing. Mm-hmm. And some of us, what did George Carlin say? There's a club and you ain't in it. Yeah. I listen to George Carlin every time I can, because he was an absolute genius. Yeah. He said, it's a club. It's a big old club, you guys. You ain't in it. Okay. That's kind of where we are. But, but I think that more and more people are clear on the conceit. Because that's why I started asking those questions about January 6th, because we have, the three of us have been on the Hill. I worked there. Mm-hmm. You can't just roll up on the Hill. It doesn't work that way. Right. Yeah. Washington is a hermetically sealed place in certain spots. You're not just going to walk up on. And when you get on the Hill, you are not getting to the speaker's. Mm-hmm. That's not going to happen on any day, particularly on a moment when they are about to close down the country. Mm-hmm. Remember, this is 2021. They had already closed it down. Mm-hmm. They were not doing tours on the Hill in January of 2021.
That's right. Yeah.
That had been suspended by that time for almost a year. Mm-hmm. So pardon me for asking, but there's just a lot that, that just, that disturbs me still. And so you tell me, because now we're seeing some people who've been on the rack for several years, and the courts, Terry, have said, well, we're going to throw out these charges. So, on one level, I don't agree with what happened on that day at all. Mm-hmm. But to have people living on tenterhooks for 4 years, I think is an awful thing. I hate that. Because I'm not, you all are the lawyers. I mean, isn't that wrong? Aren't we supposed to have a speedy trial? Isn't that supposed to happen? Okay.
Darl has practiced this law, but let me just say that what we know from the bail system in this country is that people can be incarcerated without ever having been convicted of anything for years. These are, and I hear about it from the women's movement perspective. And these are women who have children. The children are taken away from them. They lose their jobs. They have a house. They lose their house. It's questioning and presumed innocent, and not
presumed innocent.
Right.
Gary, what?
Sitting in jail, not having had a trial. Only they have been accused of something, and they have not agreed to a harsh plea deal, because the way the criminal justice system works now, and again, Darl, you know much better than I do, but really the prosecutor has, I've got all these things, I can throw the book at you, let's get a deal done, boom, done. And they have this huge, the cases, they have to run through the cases. And frankly, this is how capitalism works. This is very much part of a capitalist system that relies on things like mass incarceration, relies on the war against drugs, which is a mass incarceration. I'm just saying, yes, the insurgents, and I think in reality these are traitors to our country, and I think they were mostly motivated. I'm just going to say, I think they're mostly motivated by white Christian nationalism, by white supremacy. The frustration and the anger and the passion comes from the way they're being squeezed by capitalism, but what's in their head is that they hate certain types of people who don't look like them. And so, that I don't have a lot of sympathy for them. I have a lot more sympathy for people who a quart of a lid in the back seat of the car that belonged to your cousin, who left it there, and you're now sitting in jail for 2 years without a trial on drug charges that have a mandatory minimum, blah, 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 blah. That to me is the height of injustice.
Oh, look.
And these guys, come on, they were extremely violent.
While the president is giving pardons to some people, and not the people from the '94 crime bill, not commuting those sentences.
That's right.
Don't get me started on this. I'm not saying these people are right. I'm saying I see, to me, one injustice leads to another, leads to another, leads to another, leads to another. And even if I don't like your politics, I don't want to see people mistreated. I'm like, let's be fair, because see, I know if you're going to be unfair to them, eventually that's going to back up on me. It is. That's just the way it works. But Darl, the ladies have taken up your time.
Sorry.
No, but it's been a great discussion.
And he is well trained. I just want to know, ladies, wait a minute. You're winning points because you know when to be quiet.
But Santita, I think that in looking at what's happening now with the January 6th people that have been convicted, and those that are waiting still to go to trial, and those who are waiting to go to sentencing, there's one key lesson I think that comes out of all of this. And the one key lesson is a statement that many of us have heard, and I just think it's so apropos at this point in time. Justice delayed is justice denied. And I say that because of this. Had Merrick Garland gone forward immediately, arrested the people immediately when they were on Capitol Hill, didn't give them the chance to go home, to fly home, to drive home, and then go through all the cameras to try to figure out where all these people are. All of this would have been sped up so much more. We wouldn't have people waiting to go to trial. We wouldn't be.
But Darl, wait a minute. Hold on. Stay right there. Hold on. Wait a minute, honey. I'm not cutting you off. I'm adding to it. Just help me. Look. That's all he had to do. But for some reason, he didn't do it.
He didn't do it.
If you and I had trespassed on that hill, we would have been pulled. We would have been arrested
immediately.
So I'm like, whoa, what? Something to me, Terry, was not. This ain't adding up.
Well, people like Marcia Blackburn were were presumably telling him, certainly were saying very openly, that Joe Biden should not be installed as president, that in fact President Trump had won. There were 200 people in the United States Congress who voted to install Trump in 2020, on January 6, 2021. So these are people in the Capitol whose lives had just been threatened, who within hours of the threat going away were saying, no, Trump won the election. Biden is illegitimate, and Merrick Garland wants to keep those people happy, and it's a huge priority for him to keep Republicans happy because they're Republicans and because he's a Democrat. He believes that that's a good thing.
Darl,
and that is what has led us to where we are at this point in time. Imagine if the prosecutions had occurred immediately. Imagine what that would mean for now President-elect Trump, because it wouldn't have been 2 years down the road before you start the investigation and start explaining what all went on, it would have been immediate. It would have been immediate. So what we're looking at is what happens when you delay justice. This is what happened. So as a result of all that, and remember, the tentacles of this thing goes all over the place, right? Because we know it touches the Supreme Court. Because the Supreme Court then comes back with this the January 6th decision where it's like, I don't know, what do you call it, splitting hairs?
They're tossing out the charges.
They're dropping charges, and Terry gets this, right? We're looking at a statute that is very clear cut about obstruction of proceedings. There's no question about the clarity of obstructing a proceeding. What does Chief Justice Robert do? He says, well, it doesn't really mean what it says.
Right. Exactly.
Right. Yeah, it applies to something else. It really deals with documents. It's not really dealing with people stopping the proceeding of the certification of the election, which is the most absurd thing you could ever say. And so when we start looking at what's happening because of this delay in the prosecution and the pursuit of justice, we have all of this now that's going through. The Supreme Court is already at an all-time low. It goes even lower when it does nonsensical things like that. But all of this comes because Merrick Garland and the Department of Justice did not immediately go after those breachers of the Capitol, did not take the steps immediately to protect the members of the Congress that were in there. It should have been a no-brainer, Santita. This should have been a no-brainer. Look, we said it before, and I'll say it again. Had that been Black Lives Matter, had that been Black Voters Matter, along with everyone else going on the Capitol, fighting, saying that Trump didn't win, Biden's the real, we wouldn't be having any of these discussions. There wouldn't have been a 2-year delay, 3-year delay. We wouldn't have people waiting to go to trial now. It all would have been done immediately. So the question becomes one of this Department of Justice that was there under Merrick Garland and what it did not do that has put us in the position of having this discussion here today.
And look at Luigi Manone. He is going to trial very soon. He is not going to be languishing in jail, waiting for his day in court. Why? Because Mark Fancher's phrase, the empire can move when it wants to move. The empire can go against this guy who blatantly murders.
Well, first of all, wait a minute. We don't know what happened because I lived in New York. And you cannot get from the New York Sheridan on 6th Avenue to 78th Street in 4 minutes. I'm sorry. Y'all can say no. It does no, not even at 6:45 in the morning when the park is open and ain't nobody in there but joggers. No.
Right, but and so we don't know.
You all have not told me who he was talking to on the phone. But no.
But we have a prosecution going forward. Is my point.
No. I'm having fun.
Right. I know, and you're absolutely right. We don't until we see the trial, we don't know. But we had, you have video of these people invading, beating other people in order to get into the Capitol, beating the police officers to get to. We have all of that video, so we know that some prosecutions need to start. And what Darl said is exactly right. And why the delay? It was purely politics. It was exclusively politics. It was the concern that Republicans would squeal that they'd been treated unfairly, which in fact, only if you bow to that kind of nonsense, by buying into the Republicans' total outrageous behavior, Merrick Garland gave legitimacy to the idea that you can go in with your baseball bats and your flag poles used as weapons. You can go in with your zip ties. You can go in with all of that as long as you are a certain political stripe. Now, if it was Black Lives Matter, no way. In fact, if you recall, Wolfson, I can't remember his first name, the head of DHS, Department of Homeland Security, in 2020, I believe it was Mr. Wolfson who made the claim that the Black Lives Matter organization, which does not exist, Black Lives Matter is actually a
Mhm.
hashtag. But the Black Lives Matter organization, according to him, was a terrorist organization.
Well, they were being infiltrated and spied upon by the FBI,
Yes.
but not the Proud
Yes.
Boys,
And
not anybody. So I mean, you know what? This stuff is all over the place.
I know,
Okay,
I know, I know.
and wait, let me tell you something. To my mind, look, I did math in college also. Everything adds up.
Mhm.
Your methodology might be messed up. The equal sign does not lie.
Mhm.
The integers that you put in on the left side of the equation might be off. I had a teacher and a professor in college, my Cal teacher, Dr. Sasharay. I'll never forget him because he got on our last nerve. Yes, if he ever listens, you got on our nerves because he would give us these definitions that you had to write. If your punctuation was off, if you missed a comma or a semicolon, he docked you. He said, because the comma and the semicolon changed the definition. You know what I asked you? I used to have, because I was in college 1,000 years ago, I would have to go to the computer lab and get the Fortran paper because I had to do my homework on Fortran paper because he wanted to see every step. I was like, I'm gonna be buying reams of notebook paper forever. And it's easier if I write it out like this, like I'm on a chalkboard. This way I can do, okay. My point is, one of the things that I've learned in math and what I've learned as a musician, if there is, you can always tell when someone's out of key, out of tune. You know it. And you know what we do? When in doubt, lay out, shut up. Don't do that. Stop it. You're throwing everything off. Don't do it. Everything adds up. That's my point. We just don't have all the pieces. Because Merrick Garland could have done this, but he did not do it. Now, we don't know why. He didn't. We just don't know why. The governor of Maryland had sent the troops. They would not let them into D.C. Why? Even Trump had called for the National Guard a couple of days before. They said, no, thank you. Why? Where were the police? Why? Why were people touring the building the day before? Why? I'm just asking because you got a woman who did go in to get down on the crown and she's dead. I don't agree with what she was going to do or whatever. Because they had video of her talking because she was riled up and she was going to go to that rally and then she was going to go up on the hill. She was going to make this thing right. I didn't agree with that, but she's dead. I didn't like that either. That didn't make me feel good. Now I don't feel good about any of it. And I don't feel, I mean, and the fact that they waited so long, Attorney O'Neill and Attorney Jones, they politicized it for the American public.
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
And now everybody is like, nobody trusts the process.
Right.
So all these people can walk because nobody trusts the process. That's why I'm asking all these questions. Because I'm like, if y'all would just put all the stuff out there, then people can be more trusting of the process. You already have most Americans don't believe the official story about Dr. King, about Robert Kennedy, about John Kennedy. I mean, come on, y'all. We just can't do it now. They don't trust 911. They don't trust anything that the government says. That is not sustainable. Yeah, I put it all out there, y'all, because I hear you say it all the time. People asking questions all the time now.
Yeah. I mean, Santita, I agree. Like, we don't trust the process, but I have to say, I think that there are clear beneficiaries from increasing distrust of the process.
But I agree with you.
And the beneficiaries are, let's call it the empire, let's call them the oligarchs. Yeah. And so distrusting the process is part of what we need to do. Look, and to me, this brings us back to the problem that I have actually with the Democratic Party. And that is, it sort of crystallized for me from this election. If the Republicans represent the oligarchs, which I think they do, and their message to the rest of us is, look, your life is going to be hard and harsh because we have the power, and that's the way it goes. And if you don't like it, that's just tough. The Democrats, on the other hand, are telling us, look, your life is going to be harsh and hard because there are people with power that we're not going to really try to rein in all that hard. But what we are going to do is when you get kicked in the teeth, we're going to have an ice bag for you to put on your face and make it feel a little less bad. So the very different approaches to the oligarchs, right? The Republicans are owned and operated by the oligarchs, and the Democrats are like the third sister in the second sister in Cinderella, who was very kind to Cinderella, but had no power, but no intention of trying to change the power structure.
It's appeasement.
It was. Yes.
Yeah,
yeah.
I mean, you're right. I mean,
yes. Yes. And a lot of that is because the majority of Democrats in Congress are still funded by corporations and billionaires.
And nobody, but Democrats have done the same thing, because you had an actor. Most of us have not seen his movies, who wrote a letter to the New York Times. New York Times doesn't publish everybody's letters.
Mm-hmm.
And that became the talk du jour. And 14 million votes were thrown out. Now, mind you, we've been asking, some of us, and they call us blasphemers and Trump supporters, had been saying, like Norman Solomon and Jeff Cohen, and I agreed with them. He said he was going to be a transitional president, which means 4 years. Okay, now in 2 years, we need you to say that you're not going to run. You don't have to bless Kamala. You should, but you don't have to. But you need to give everybody the space to gear up.
Yeah.
And then when you do, you give her 107 days. She's got to figure it out. She would have been crazy if she'd walked away from the opportunity. But you know what? She was stuck with his people who didn't want her to run. Number one, they didn't expect to not be running with him, and they didn't like her.
That's the glass cliff on steroids. It's like when the job becomes totally impossible, you give it to a woman. You give it to a woman of color, because
look, I'm putting it right here. You give it to the black chick, okay?
I'm saying.
But you know what? They didn't treat Hillary much better.
No.
Hillary and Bill Clinton, the party was broke, y'all. They couldn't make payroll. They went into their personal money and paid the staff. So when you all were talking about doing the forensics on her in 2016, no one asked you that. No one asked them that when they had to go into tap their contacts and their money to pay the staff.
Right.
Did that not happen?
It did. And actually, Obama did changed things so that the president's candidacy did not walk away with the lists of donors.
He wouldn't give anybody the list, which was awful.
He eventually did.
Yeah, but eventually the people had to beg.
Okay, well, yeah.
He come on into that part.
That was true. I mean, that happened. Yeah, there was a whole conversation. It occupied Washington's brain for quite some time, at least parts of Washington. But I mean, look at New York State. When Andrew Cuomo is basically dethroned, the New York State Democratic Party has virtually no staff of its own and no money of its own, because it's the governor, the position of the governor within the Democratic Party, the way it works, the position of the governor owns and operates the lists. And so when he gets dethroned, he takes it away with him. And what happens? The next election, the next general election that comes around, the state party is falling apart, has almost no staff, and they lose a lot of elections, both at the state level and in the congressional level. That was in 2020.
But you make a brilliant point. Dethroned, which meant that he was a king.
Oh, and yeah.
We're not in a constitutional monarchy. We're in a republic.
This is an oligarchy.
Okay, so that's why we have a king. I stand corrected.
Oh, so I live in Tennessee, and actually, there's a commentator here in one of the alternative newspapers who wrote a wonderful column. Dear America, welcome to Tennessee. We've been in oligarchy for 10 years, and let me tell you what this is going to look like now for you.
Oh, wow. I mean, Maria's been making some fantastic comments. She said, despite all the crap that happened, I love Kamala Harris. I do too. And she said, for the vibrancy she brought to her campaign, unfortunately, she didn't have the time to build up her platform. And they did not give her the space to say they had her doing word salad.
Yeah. Yes.
She was like this. And they told her not to say. And so the best she could do was, I am speaking. That, I mean, come on.
Yeah.
And then because I've been reading these different reports about the campaign, and I am like, oh, what, this was awful. That she was running with people who they wanted someone else to run, and they weren't feeling her. I mean, at some point we have to be honest about what happened. If you don't do the post-mortem on this thing, they didn't do it in 2016. Roots Action, Norman Solomon and Jeff Cohen did the post-mortem on 2016. I read it again. It sounded like I had to look at the date because it looked like they had written it for 2024.
Right.
So I'm looking at Merrick Garland on one hand. I mean, and then you drag out these hearings through the Biden administration. It looks like they're persecuting, not prosecuting. You can't win.
Yeah.
They didn't lead anybody off the hill in handcuffs.
No. And let me say this, Santita. I mean, you're absolutely on point. I think that with Merrick Garland, what he did not do. And one thing I want to say, though, is this, is that we know that had this been the Trump administration that was in place, things would have moved so differently, so quickly. And I can support it by saying this. He's now nominated Pam Bondi to be the Attorney General. If she was the Attorney General at the point that this was happening, you wouldn't have had all this foot dragging. You wouldn't have had all these delays. Things would have moved rapidly and quickly. And that's why I place fault at that mat of Merrick Garland with regards to everything that unfolded, because the Justice Department didn't do its job as it should have. It slowed everything down. It slow walked the charges. It slow walked all of this stuff, the indictments, all of this was slow walk. And as a result, you had to continue to hear about what was going on. It played a role in what did our brother call it down the second White House down in Florida, or however Dwight McKee referred to it.
Absolutely. I mean, it was like, because San Clemente was the Western White House when we were kids for Nixon, right? And I mean, that's what happened. But power. When you're in power, this is the way the game goes. So that's a lesson that we've got to learn, because he understands this. Okay, we've been playing,
right,
and not just playing. Sometimes on one level, I'm like, sometimes y'all act like y'all on the same team, because they just gave $21 billion more dollars to Ukraine last week. Biden is on a spending spree. Now, really? They need $21 billion more dollars? Do you know we have people who are freezing and wet and living in tents in North Carolina? Yeah. They still haven't made things right for them. I mean, give them a trailer, something. That's just there.
And what's happening in Gaza now? How much?
I mean,
what lessons were learned? You went through this election. What lessons were learned?
Same thing. You have newborn babies who are freezing to death because they're living literally in mud. They've had torrential rains.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So the tent cities that they are living in, they're literally sleeping in mud.
Yeah.
Oh, come on,
Yeah.
y'all. But
Yeah.
I mean, Haiti is still. We
Mhm.
can't even get that. We can't get that, and that's down the street.
Hmm. Well, yeah, and consider that with Haiti, guess
Mm.
who got the reparations from the existence, from the declaration of the existence of the nation of Haiti? France. France demanded reparations for the loss of their property, namely the human beings who had declared their independence in Haiti. They demanded reparations for the value of the humans that they said that, and Haiti went into debt for decades.
Yeah,
In the, what was it, the 1800s? Through the
absolutely.
1800s, this debt that was earning interest all the time. Yeah, that's how reparations work in a Western capitalist world. And so what you see in Gaza is Western capitalists, mostly England, creating
Oof.
the state of Israel, failing to give Palestinians anything like a state where you might have some kind of shared power, shared blah, blah, blah. And unlike the settlers in this country who came in and genocided their way across the land,
Oh.
in fairness, Israeli Jews had a 2,000-year-old claim to the land. White settlers did not. You know, you had indigenous people living in this country for 14,000 years before the white settlers come onto this property. That was not true over in Israel. There was an arguable
But
claim.
no, but these are the European Jews who are not even good to the black ones.
who have been
I
um,
mean,
who've been exiled out of Spain, out of Eastern Europe, out of Western Europe, out of Egypt, out of Jordan, out of Syria. They've all been ethnically cleansed out of those places. And where do they go? Well, let's put them
well,
where
no,
the Palestinians are, because we don't even like the Palestinians to begin with. Let's make it their problem. And then we'll have a capitalist stronghold
yeah,
in this area, and we don't really care about the Palestinians. We're not going to do anything for them. And bang, it's what we tried to do in Vietnam and failed, to get the capitalist stronghold there. So this is, I mean, Mark Venture is right. You know, this is empire, and it's empire being run by stupid people who really can't think
no. It's
much
hubris.
past beyond their nose, and
It's
the
hubris.
next dollar that they could put in their pocket.
It's hubris because, quite frankly, it's the European Jewry who were genocided out of Europe, who were pushed out. They were genocided out of Germany, and then they were
Yes,
pushed out
and
because
Poland.
that
Yeah.
was not the issue. Because when you in Palestine, the three major religions peacefully coexisted. That was known as the Paris of that region, particularly Beirut. I mean, these people,
Until the British decided,
yeah.
because they owned it, right? They came in and owned
But no,
Palestine.
because they decided
Yeah,
that they were going to cut a deal
yeah,
about the Balfour Declaration, and they wanted a stronghold in an oil-rich region.
yeah.
Because they had the opportunity to have Texas or Uganda. Remember?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay. Because ironically enough, the person who brokered the deal, who helped to create Israel, was a black man named Ralph Bunche,
Mm,
who won a Nobel Peace Prize.
that's right.
Remember that?
That's
One of
right.
the first black diplomats in our history,
Mhm.
in America's history. Let's not forget him.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I know.
you know, I
I know.
mean, wait, because I have to let some of my friends know. I'm like, wait. You all brought a lot of your own white anti-black racism into this region, and that's part of what these folks are dealing with right now.
That's yes.
Is they're going after people of color, and people of color recognize it. We peep it because we live with it every day. We're like, come on, y'all, stop it.
Mm-hmm.
And and everybody over there is not with this, but too many of them are.
Right. Yes.
Too many of us signed up to this anti-black, anti-brown, anti-poor.
Mhm.
Okay, because we're very, very clear. You let some white people, poor white people, who, if they decided that they wanted to sit in on the Capitol like they did in the 20s and 30s with their
Right.
tent cities, they got them out of there.
Mm-hmm.
Because while they come after black and brown people first and hardest, they eventually come after poor white folks.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Mhm.
Oh, gosh. Oh, I need a compress. And so AM 950 Radio family. Oh my gosh. I love you all. This has been a lot. And you know, I think I'm just trying to figure out the day. Y'all got a lot of snow in Washington, and oh my gosh, maybe that helped it. Maybe that stopped, you know, people from trying to charge the hill on thank goodness. God.
It'd be a snowball fight.
A snowball fight. Yeah, and the car is going here and here.
Oh
Nobody in
God.
Washington knows how to drive in the snow.
I can't take anymore. I'm like, y'all, please don't let anything go crazy. My brother's up there right now. I can't. I don't want to see this happen anymore, but I don't want to see it. AM 950 Radio, I love you, everybody. The Santita Jackson Show, love you, Terry O'Neill, Attorney Terry O'Neill. Love you, Attorney Darrell Jones. And tell Bailey, hush, we love Bailey.